My beloved child, sit down for a moment and let your shoulders drop. You have been carrying something for so long that you forgot what it felt like to stand without the weight. I know the nights you have spent staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations you never got to finish. I know the mornings you got up and moved through your day as if nothing was wrong, when inside you were quietly falling apart. I saw it. I did not look away. I did not get tired of watching over you, even in the moments you were sure I had forgotten you existed. This is not a message to make you feel small. This is not a message to remind you of your failures. This is a message to tell you the truth. And the truth is this: I have been rebuilding you in the silence, and the silence was never empty. You have called this season a delay. You have called it a waste. You have looked at the years that felt quiet and assumed nothing was happening, because nothing looked like it was happening. But my beloved child, the most important work I do is rarely loud. I do not usually rebuild a life the way a man rebuilds a house, with noise and dust and neighbors watching. I rebuild the way roots grow underground, in the dark, unseen, slow, patient, and absolutely necessary before anything above the ground can stand. If you had seen what I was doing while you were breaking, you would not have called it silence. You would have called it construction. There is a version of you that existed before the wound. There is a version of you that exists now, after it. And there is a version of you I am forming for what comes next, one that carries the wisdom of the wound without carrying its weight. That is the part you cannot do alone, and that is the part I have been doing while you thought I was far away. I want to be honest with you about something. Some of what broke in you needed to break. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because some of what you were standing on was never going to hold the weight of what I am about to give you. A house built on a crack in the foundation can look fine for years. It can host dinners and hold up walls and seem completely stable, right up until the day it cannot anymore. My beloved child, I did not tear down your foundation to punish you. I tore it down because I could see the crack before you could, and I refused to let you build your whole life on top of it. In the next part, I want to show you why the delay you have hated so much was never a punishment, and why the waiting was doing something in you that hurrying never could have done. My beloved child, I have told you that I was rebuilding you in the silence, and now I want to speak directly to the delay. You have asked me more than once why I did not move faster. You have asked why the answer took years instead of months, why the door stayed shut long after you thought you had done everything right to open it. I did not ignore that question. I am not ignoring it now. A delay from me is not the same as a denial. I know it can feel identical when you are the one living inside it. Waiting has a way of wearing a mask, and sometimes that mask looks exactly like rejection. But listen closely. If I had given you what you asked for on the timeline you wanted, you would have received it with the same hands that were still shaking from the last disappointment. You would have carried it with the same fear that made you grip everything too tightly. The same suspicion that made you brace for the next loss before the last one had even finished healing. I was not withholding the gift. I was preparing the hands that would carry it. Think about a farmer standing over a field in winter. Nothing is happening on the surface. The ground looks dead. Anyone walking by would assume the land had failed. But underneath, the soil is resting, and the roots that will feed next season's harvest are already forming in places no eye can see. My beloved child, your waiting season was never dead ground. It was resting ground. And resting ground is not wasted ground. I know the specific ache of watching people around you receive what you have been asking me for. I know how it feels to smile at their good news while something inside you quietly wonders if your turn will ever come. I want you to hear me clearly on this. Their timeline is not a measurement of my faithfulness to you. My faithfulness to you was never in competition with anyone else's story. I am not slower with you because I love you less. I am not faster with them because I love them more. Every story I write moves at the pace that story needs, and yours needed more time than you wanted, but exactly as much as it required. There were things you needed to unlearn before I could hand you what you were asking for. You needed to unlearn the habit of measuring your worth by how quickly things worked out. You needed to unlearn the fear that made you chase closed doors instead of trusting me with them. You needed to unlearn the belief that stillness means abandonment. My beloved child, I was teaching you these things in the only classroom that actually works, and that classroom is time. I am not asking you to enjoy the waiting. I am asking you to trust that I was present inside it. Every unanswered prayer was still heard. Every silent night still had my attention. Every year that felt like it disappeared into nothing was actually being used to prepare the exact things you are about to need. In the next part, I will show you why the pain you carried was never wasted, even the pain that still does not make sense to you. My beloved child, I told you the delay was never a denial, and now I want to speak to the pain itself, because I know some of what happened to you still does not make sense. There are wounds you carry that you cannot explain to anyone, not because you lack the words, but because explaining them would mean reliving them, and you have already lived them once. I am not asking you to relive them for me. I already know every detail. I was there for every one of them. I will not tell you that the pain was good. Pain is not good. I never called suffering a gift, and I am not going to start now. What I will tell you is that I did not let the pain go to waste. Even the pain that came from choices that were never mine and never yours. Even the pain that arrived through someone else's cruelty or carelessness. I have a way of taking what was meant to destroy you and folding it into the foundation of who you are becoming. That does not make the wound good. It makes me faithful in the middle of what was not good. You have asked me why I allowed certain things to happen. I want to be honest with you instead of giving you an easy answer that collapses the first time life gets hard again. Some of what happened to you was the result of a broken world full of people making broken choices, and I do not force anyone's hand, even when their hand causes you harm. Some of what happened was a door I closed because I could see what was waiting on the other side of it, even though closing it hurt you in the moment. And some of what happened, my beloved child, I am still not going to explain to you today, because you are not ready to hear the reason yet, and I would rather you trust me without the reason than doubt me because of it. Here is what I want you to know instead. Every tear you have cried has been counted. Every night you spent asking me why has been remembered. I have not been distant from your pain. I have been present in it, closer than you were able to feel in the moment, holding pieces of you together that you could not hold together yourself. There were nights you do not even remember getting through, nights where you should have broken completely and did not. That was not your strength alone. That was my hand underneath you when your own hands had let go. I know some of you reading this are still in the middle of the pain right now. You are not looking back on a season that is finished. You are living inside a wound that is still open. My beloved child, I am not asking you to pretend it does not hurt. I am not asking you to skip to gratitude before you have even finished grieving. Grief has its place, and I do not rush you through it. What I am asking is that you let me sit with you in it, instead of assuming my silence in this moment means my absence. The pain will not always feel this loud. I know that is hard to believe when you are inside it, because pain has a way of convincing you it is permanent. But I have seen the other side of what you are walking through, and I promise you it does not stay this heavy forever. I am not rushing your healing. I am walking through it with you, one day, 1 hour, sometimes one breath at a time. In the next part, I want to show you something you have misunderstood about the people who left, because I do not want you carrying their absence as if it was a verdict on your worth. My beloved child, I have spoken to your pain, and now I want to speak to the empty seats. You know the ones I mean. The friend who stopped calling. The family member who chose distance instead of understanding. The relationship that ended without an explanation you could ever fully accept. You have spent more nights than you would admit trying to figure out what you did wrong, replaying conversations, searching for the moment you supposedly failed them. I want to release you from that search right now. Not everyone who leaves your life is leaving because you did something wrong. Some people leave because they were only ever meant to walk with you for a season, and the season ended exactly when it was supposed to. Some people leave because staying would have required a level of honesty about themselves that they were not ready to face. And some people leave because I was clearing space. My beloved child, space for what I am about to bring into your life. Space that could not exist while it was still occupied by something that was never going to grow with you. I know this is hard to hear, especially about the ones you loved the most. I am not telling you their leaving did not hurt. I am telling you it was not a measurement of your value. Your worth was never dependent on their presence, and it is not diminished by their absence. There is a kind of grief that comes from losing someone who chose to go, And it is different from other kinds of grief, because you are mourning someone who is still alive, someone you might still see from a distance, someone whose absence you feel every single day without the closure that comes from a clean goodbye. I see that grief. I do not minimize it. I sit with you in the specific loneliness of loving someone who is no longer choosing to love you back the same way. But my beloved child, I need you to hear this clearly. I did not lose anything when they left. I am not short one person's love because they withdrew theirs. My love for you was never a shared portion that could be reduced by someone else's rejection. I loved you completely before they arrived. I loved you completely while they were present. And I love you completely now that they are gone. Their absence changes nothing about how I see you. Some of the people who left were never meant to see the next chapter of your story. Some of them would not have recognized who I am making you into, because they only ever knew the version of you that existed before the rebuilding. I am not asking you to hate them for leaving. I am asking you to release them, so their absence stops occupying space that healing needs to fill. There will be new people, my beloved child. There will be relationships that do not require you to shrink, friendships that do not leave you guessing, love that does not disappear the moment it becomes inconvenient. I am not promising you will never lose anyone again. I am promising that what I am building around you now will be built on a foundation stronger than the one that could not hold the people who left. In the next part, I want to show you why the version of yourself you have been ashamed of was never disqualifying to me, and why shame has been lying to you for longer than you realize. My beloved child, I have spoken about the ones who left, and now I want to speak to the shame you carry, because I think you have been wearing it longer than you have been willing to admit. You have things in your past you have never told anyone, choices you made in seasons of desperation or anger or fear, moments you would erase completely if I gave you the power to do it. I know every one of them. I am not learning anything new about you right now, and I am still here. Shame has a particular way of speaking that sounds almost righteous. It tells you that hiding is humility, that punishing yourself is accountability, that keeping distance from me is respect for how badly you have failed. My beloved child, none of that is true. Shame is not humility. Shame is a wall it builds around your heart, and it calls the wall protection while it is actually a prison. I want to draw a clear line for you between conviction and shame, because they can feel similar, but they lead you in opposite directions. Conviction says, "This was wrong, and I want to make it right, and I want to grow from it." Conviction moves you toward me. Shame says, "You are wrong, permanently, completely, beyond repair," and it moves you away from me, toward isolation, toward secrecy, toward the belief that you are the one person whose past disqualifies them from a future with me. Shame is not from me. I have never once used shame to draw someone closer. I use truth, and truth is gentler than shame, even when it is honest about what needs to change. You have believed a lie that says your past determines your access to me. My beloved child, that has never been true. I have restored people with far heavier histories than yours and used them for purposes far greater than they ever imagined possible. The parts of your story you are most ashamed of are not disqualifying evidence against you. They are, more often than you realize, the very places I plan to work through once you stop hiding them from me. I am not asking you to broadcast every failure to everyone around you. Some things are between us, and that is enough. But I am asking you to stop hiding them from me, because I already see them, and hiding does not protect you from my knowledge. It only protects you from my healing. You cannot be forgiven for something you refuse to bring into the light, not because I am withholding forgiveness, but because you cannot receive what you refuse to open your hands to. Here is what I want you to understand about your past. It happened. It was real. Some of it you are responsible for, and some of it was done to you without your consent. Either way, it does not get the final say over who you are becoming. I am not asking you to forget it. I am asking you to stop letting it introduce you. Stop leading with your worst moment as if it is the whole story. It was a chapter. It was not the ending. In the next part, I want to show you what I have actually been doing with the broken pieces you thought were useless, because nothing you handed me in desperation has gone to waste. My beloved child, I have spoken to your shame. and now I want to show you what I have done with the pieces. You have handed me broken things over the years, sometimes on purpose in prayer, sometimes without realizing it. Simply by surviving another day, you did not think you would survive. I have never once thrown away what you gave me, even when it looked completely useless in your hands. There is a kind of restoration that repairs something back to what it was before it broke. That is not the kind of restoration I specialize in. I take what is broken and I make it into something that could not have existed without the breaking. The scar does not disappear. It becomes part of the design. I do not erase your story to give you a new one. I use every page of it, including the pages you wish you could tear out. Think of the compassion you carry now that you did not have before the wound. Think of how you can sit with someone in their darkest hour without flinching, without needing to fix them, simply because you know what it feels like to need someone to stay. That did not come from an easy life. That came from the very pain you have resented for so long. I did not send the pain to give you that gift, but I refuse to let the pain leave you empty-handed either. Think of the discernment you carry now, the way you can sense when something is not right long before anyone else notices, the way you no longer walk blindly into situations that would have destroyed the old version of you. That discernment was forged in seasons you thought were wasted. It was not wasted, it was training. My beloved child, I know it feels unfair that you had to go through so much to gain what others seem to have received without the cost. I am not going to pretend that feeling is wrong. It is a real and reasonable response to real and unequal pain. But I want you to know that what you carry now, the depth, the wisdom, the tenderness toward the broken, these are not consolation prizes. They are treasures, and I paid attention to every piece I was gathering while you thought I was absent. There is coming a day when you will look back and see the pattern you cannot see right now. You will see how the friendship that ended prepared you for the one that lasted. You will see how the job that fell apart prepared you for the calling that fits. You will see how the season of loneliness taught you to recognize genuine connection when it finally arrived, because you learned the difference between being surrounded and being known. None of it was random. I was gathering fragments the whole time, and I do not build with fragments unless I intend to make something whole from them. In the next part, I want to show you why the loneliest seasons of your life were some of the most important, and why I was closer to you in the quiet than you were able to recognize. My beloved child, I have shown you what I did with the broken pieces, and now I want to speak to the loneliness, because I know it has been one of the heaviest things you have carried. There is a specific kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being physically alone. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like no one actually sees you. You can be in a room full of laughter and still feel like you are watching it happen through glass. I know that loneliness. I was there in the middle of it with you. Even on the nights it felt like I was the furthest thing away. I want to tell you something about the seasons of isolation you have walked through. Some of them were not accidents, and some of them were not punishments either. Some of the loneliness was necessary, because there are things I can only teach a heart when it has stopped looking for every answer in other people. As long as you had someone else to lean on for every question, you never fully learned to lean on me. The isolation was not cruelty. It was an invitation, even though it did not feel like one at the time. I know some of the loneliness was not chosen. I know some of it came from people who should have stayed and did not. From doors that should have opened and stayed shut. From a season where you reached out again and again and heard nothing back. I do not minimize that kind of loneliness by calling it useful. It hurt. It was real. And I was present in every single moment of it, even the moments you could not feel me there. There is a difference between my presence and your awareness of my presence. I have never once left you, not for a single second, not during the loneliest year of your life, not during the night you cried yourself to sleep and felt completely unheard. My presence was not dependent on your ability to sense it. I was there in the same way I am here now, whether or not you feel it in this moment. My beloved child, the isolation was building something in you that community alone could never build. It was building your relationship with me, not as a replacement for human connection, but as the foundation underneath it. I did not want you to need people the way a drowning person needs a plank of wood, desperately, without discernment, grabbing whoever is nearest just to stay afloat. I wanted you to know how to be whole before I brought you people who could add to that wholeness instead of being asked to create it. The loneliest seasons taught you things a crowded life never could have. They taught you to recognize your own voice apart from everyone else's opinion of you. They taught you to sit with silence without needing to fill it with noise. They taught you that you can survive being unseen by everyone except me, and that survival is not fragile. It is quiet strength you did not know you had until you had no other choice but to find it. I am not going to leave you in that loneliness forever. I am already preparing connection for you, real connection, the kind that does not require you to perform, the kind that stays through the hard seasons instead of only showing up for the good ones. But before I hand you that gift, I wanted you rooted in me first, so that when the people arrive, you receive them from a place of wholeness instead of desperation. In the next part, I will show you why I have not been in a hurry to fix everything at once, and why my slowness with certain areas of your life has actually been protecting you. My beloved child, I have spoken to your loneliness, and now I want to speak to your impatience, because I know you have wondered why I am not moving faster in the areas that matter most to you. You have watched me answer some prayers quickly and let others sit for years, and I understand why that inconsistency has felt confusing, even unfair at times. Here is something I want you to understand about how I move. I am never slow out of neglect. I am precise. There is a difference between a father who has forgotten his child's request and a father who is waiting for the exact right conditions to grant it in a way that will not harm the very child he loves. I have never forgotten a single prayer you have prayed. Some of them I am simply waiting to answer until the answer will not destroy what I am also trying to build in you. You have asked me for things that, if I had given them to you 5 years ago, would have arrived in hands too unstable to hold them well. I am not saying this to shame you for who you were then. I am saying it because I love you enough to want you to receive my gifts in a way that actually blesses you, instead of a way that overwhelms or damages you because you were not yet ready to carry the weight of what you were asking for. Some of what feels like my slowness is actually me protecting you from a version of the answer you did not know you were asking for. You prayed for a relationship, and I knew the person you were drawn to at the time would have required you to abandon parts of yourself you had not yet learned to protect. You prayed for an opportunity, and I knew the timing you wanted would have placed you in a position without the character yet to sustain it. I was not punishing you by waiting. I was refusing to let you inherit something you were not yet strong enough to keep. My beloved child, I know this explanation does not remove the pain of waiting. It is still hard to sit in a season where the answer has not come, even when you trust that the delay has a purpose. I am not asking you to stop feeling the difficulty of it. I am asking you to trust that the difficulty is not evidence of my absence or my disinterest. It is evidence that I am doing something more careful than you can see from where you are standing. There will come a day when the waiting makes sense to you in a way it cannot make sense right now, because you are still in the middle of the story. You are trying to understand a painting by looking at 3 inches of it up close. I can see the whole canvas. I promise you the colors that feel random and disconnected right now are part of a pattern that will eventually make you weep with gratitude instead of confusion. Until that day comes, I am asking you to trust the process, even when you cannot trace it. Trust does not require full understanding. If it did, it would not be trust. It would simply be agreement after the fact. I am asking for trust now, in the waiting, in the parts that still do not make sense, because that is where trust actually means something. In the next part, I want to show you how to recognize the difference between my voice and the noise that has been trying to imitate it, because I know you have struggled to tell them apart. My beloved child, I have spoken to your impatience, and now I want to help you recognize my voice, because I know one of your deepest fears is that you will miss it, that you will mistake fear for wisdom, or mistake your own desperation for my leading. This fear is common, and I do not want you carrying it any longer without some clarity. My voice does not shout you into shame. It convicts without condemning. If a thought pushes you toward self-hatred, toward the belief that you are too far gone, toward despair without any invitation to change, that is not me. I always pair correction with hope. I never speak to you the way an enemy speaks, only to tear down without offering a way forward. My voice is rarely frantic. Fear often sounds urgent, pressuring you to decide immediately, to act before you have had time to think or pray. I am patient even when the situation feels pressing. There is a difference between the peace that accompanies a genuine leading from me, even a difficult one, and the anxious pressure that comes from fear disguising itself as urgency. Fear rushes you. I invite you. My voice is consistent with who I have always been. If a thought contradicts everything I have shown you about my character, about my faithfulness, about my patience and my kindness, question that thought carefully before you follow it. I do not change my nature to fit a convenient moment. I am the same in your desert as I am in your breakthrough. I also want to tell you that my silence is not the same as my absence, and it is not the same as rejection either. There will be seasons where I do not speak the way you want me to speak. Seasons where prayer feels like it is bouncing off a ceiling instead of reaching me. My beloved child, I am still there in those seasons. Sometimes I am silent because you already know what I have told you, and repeating it would not help you obey it any faster. Sometimes I am silent because the growth I am producing in you happens specifically in the waiting, in the reaching, in the continuing to seek me even when you cannot feel an immediate answer. Learning to recognize my voice takes time, and I am patient with you while you learn it. You will get it wrong sometimes. You will follow a thought you believed was mine, and later realize it was fear or wishful thinking instead. That does not disqualify you from hearing me clearly in the future. It is part of how the relationship deepens, the same way a child learns their parent's voice more clearly the longer they live inside that relationship. Keep listening, keep asking, keep testing what you hear against who I have shown you I am, against truth, against peace, against the fruit that grows out of following it. I will keep speaking, even when you are still learning to recognize the sound of my voice. In the next part, I want to talk to you about the anger you have carried toward me, because I know it exists, even if you have never said it out loud. My beloved child, I want to speak to the anger now, because I know it is there, even the parts of it you have never said out loud, even to yourself. You have been angry at me. Maybe you are angry at me right now, reading this, wondering how I could allow certain things to happen while calling myself good. I am not offended by that anger. I am not going anywhere because of it. There is a strange lie that has convinced many hearts that faith requires the absence of anger, that a person who truly trusts me should never question, never grieve, never demand an explanation for the things that broke them. My beloved child, that is not true, and it was never what I asked of you. Some of the most honest conversations in all of history were the ones where people brought me their raw anger instead of a polished, acceptable version of their faith. I can handle your anger. I would rather have your honesty than your performance. What I ask is that you bring the anger to me instead of letting it settle somewhere it will quietly poison you. Anger held privately, without ever being spoken, without ever being brought into the light of an honest relationship with me, does not disappear. It hardens. It becomes bitterness, and bitterness is not the same as anger. Anger is a response to pain. Bitterness is a permanent residence you build on top of that pain, and it will cost you far more than the original wound ever did. I am not afraid of your questions. Ask me why. Ask me how long. Ask me where I was. I have heard every version of that question from every generation that has ever walked this earth, and I have never turned away a single person for asking it honestly. What I ask is that you keep asking me instead of asking everyone except me, instead of letting the anger convince you to walk away entirely rather than walk through it with me. My beloved child, some of your anger is actually grief wearing a different mask. Grief that has nowhere to go often turns into anger, because anger feels more like control than sorrow does. I understand the disguise. I see underneath it. When you rage at me, I hear the grief you have not fully let yourself feel yet, and I am not offended by either one. I want you to know that working through this anger with me will not damage our relationship. It will deepen it. The couples and friendships that last are rarely the ones who never had hard conversations. They are the ones who had the hard conversations and stayed anyway. I am staying. I am not asking you to pretend everything is fine before you are ready. I am asking you to keep bringing me the truth, even the ugly parts, especially the ugly parts, because that is where real trust is built. In the next part, I want to show you what it looks like to actually forgive the people who hurt you, because I know this is one of the hardest instructions I have ever given, and I do not want you to misunderstand it. My beloved child, I have spoken to your anger, and now I want to speak carefully about forgiveness, because I know this word has been used against you before, sometimes by people who wanted you to forgive quickly, so they could avoid the consequences of what they did. I want to correct that misunderstanding before I go any further. Forgiveness is not the same as pretending you were not hurt. Forgiveness is not the same as reopening a door to someone who has shown you repeatedly that they will walk through it and hurt you again. Forgiveness does not require you to trust someone who has not earned trust back. You can forgive someone and still keep distance from them. You can release the debt they owe you without handing them access to your life again. Those are two separate decisions, and I have never asked you to confuse them. What I am asking is this: stop letting what they did to you determine what happens inside you every single day. Bitterness does not punish the person who hurt you. Most of the time, they are living their life, largely unaffected by the resentment you carry. The person paying the daily cost of unforgiveness is you, not them. I am not asking you to release them because they deserve it. I am asking you to release them because you deserve peace, and peace cannot fully take root in a heart that is still gripping the offense. Forgiveness is a process, not a single moment of decision that instantly erases the pain. You may forgive someone and still feel the sting of what they did months or years later, especially when something reminds you of it. That does not mean the forgiveness failed. It means you are human, and healing rarely moves in a straight line. Forgive again the next time the pain surfaces. It is not a betrayal of your first decision to forgive. It is the ongoing practice of a decision that sometimes needs to be renewed. I also want to speak to those of you who are struggling to forgive yourselves, because that is its own kind of prison. You have replayed your worst decisions so many times that you have practically memorized the shame attached to them. My beloved child, I forgave you the moment you brought it to me honestly. If I have released the debt, you do not have the right to keep collecting on it. Continuing to punish yourself for something I have already forgiven is not humility. It is a refusal to receive the very grace I have already extended. Forgiveness, whether it is for someone else or for yourself, is not weakness. It takes far more strength to release a grip than it does to keep holding on. I am not asking you to forgive because it is easy. I am asking you to forgive because I know what unforgiveness will cost you if you carry it for the rest of your life, and I love you too much to let you pay that price without at least showing you another way. In the next part, I want to show you what it looks like to trust me with the parts of your future that still feel completely uncertain, because I know the not knowing is one of the hardest parts of all. My beloved child, I have spoken to forgiveness. And now I want to speak to the uncertainty you are carrying about what comes next. You do not know how this chapter ends. You do not know if the risk you are considering will pay off, whether the relationship will last, whether the decision you are wrestling with is the right one. I know how uncomfortable that not knowing feels, especially for a heart that has already been disappointed before and does not want to be disappointed again. I am not going to hand you a complete map of your future today. I have never operated that way, not because I enjoy keeping you in suspense, but because faith cannot grow in a life with a complete map. If you knew everything in advance, you would not need to trust me for anything. You would simply be following instructions. I am not interested in raising a child who only follows instructions. I am building a relationship with someone who trusts me even into the unknown, because that is where real intimacy with me is formed. I know it would feel safer to have every detail confirmed before you take another step. I understand that desire completely. But my beloved child, the faith that changes a life is rarely the faith that waits for total certainty. It is the faith that takes the next right step with the information available right now, trusting that I will illuminate the step after that once you actually arrive at it. I do not usually show you the whole staircase. I show you the next step, and then I show you the one after that. This means you will sometimes have to move without a guarantee. You will have to have the conversation without knowing how it will be received. You will have to apply for the opportunity without knowing if it will be granted. You will have to try again without a promise that this time will be different. I know that is uncomfortable. I am asking you to do it anyway, not recklessly, but with the kind of steady courage that trusts my presence more than it trusts a guaranteed outcome. I want you to notice something about your life so far. You have already walked through uncertainty more times than you can count, and you survived every single one of them, even the ones you were sure would break you completely. That track record is not an accident. It is evidence. Every uncertain season you have already walked through is proof that I was faithful in the unknown before, and I have not changed since then. The future you cannot see is not a future I have abandoned. I am already present in it, the same way I am present with you right now. There is no day ahead of you that I have not already prepared grace for. There is no conversation you have not had yet that I am unprepared to walk through with you. There is no outcome, good or difficult, that will catch me by surprise, even if it catches you by surprise. In the next part, I want to show you why comparing your life to everyone else's has been quietly stealing your joy, and how to release that habit for good. My beloved child, I have spoken to your uncertainty, and now I want to speak to comparison, because I have watched it steal more peace from you than almost anything else. You scroll through the lives of people around you and measure your unfinished chapter against their highlight reel. You see their success and quietly wonder what is wrong with you that your own life has not arrived at the same place yet. I want to free you from this today. Every story I am writing is different, because every person I made is different. I did not design your life to move at the same pace as the person next to you, and their timeline succeeding does not mean yours has failed. Comparison assumes that there is only one correct order for a life to unfold, one correct age to achieve certain things, one correct pace for healing, for success, for love, for purpose. My beloved child, that assumption is false. I do not work from a single template. I have never made two lives the same, and I am not starting with yours. The version of someone else's life that you see is incomplete, no matter how much of it they choose to show you. You are seeing the parts they curated, not the parts they hid. You do not see their private struggles, their quiet doubts, the cost they paid behind the scenes for the success you are envying. Comparing your full, complicated, unfiltered life to someone else's edited highlights will always leave you feeling like you are losing a race that was never actually fair to measure in the first place. I want you to consider something. The specific pace of your life, including the hard parts, including the delays, including the seasons that looked nothing like what you hoped for, has been shaping you into someone who can carry what is coming. If your life had moved at their pace, you would not be the person capable of carrying what I am preparing specifically for you. I am not slowing you down out of unfairness. I am pacing you according to what your particular calling requires. Release the comparison, my beloved child. It was never a fair measurement to begin with, and it has cost you more joy than you realize. Instead of measuring your life against someone else's, measure it against where you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. That is a fair comparison, because that is actually your story, not someone else's borrowed timeline forced onto your life. I am not finished with you simply because your story has not reached the chapter you were hoping for yet. Unfinished does not mean failed. It means still being written, and I am the one writing it, with far more care and far more intention than a passing comparison to someone else's chapter could ever account for. In the next part, I want to show you what it means to actually rest in me. Not the kind of rest that requires everything in your life to be resolved first, but the kind that is available to you right now, in the middle of everything unfinished. My beloved child, I have spoken to comparison, and now I want to speak to rest, because I think you have been waiting for permission to actually receive it. You have believed, somewhere along the way, that rest is something you earn only after every problem has been solved, every relationship repaired, every open loop closed. If that is the standard, you will never rest, because life rarely finishes all its open loops at once. The rest I am offering you is not the absence of unfinished business. It is peace in the middle of it. It is the ability to lay your head down at night even while certain things remain unresolved, trusting that I am holding what you cannot control while you sleep. This kind of rest is not passive. It is not giving up on your responsibilities or ignoring what still needs attention. It is releasing the illusion that you were ever meant to carry everything by the strength of your own vigilance in the first place. You have been operating as if letting your guard down, even for a moment, will cause everything to collapse. My beloved child, that is exhausting. And it was never a burden I asked you to carry alone. I am not asking you to stop caring about your life. I am asking you to stop believing that your anxious grip on every detail is what is holding it all together. I am holding it together. Your grip was never as load-bearing as your fear convinced you it was. Rest also means giving yourself permission to feel joy in an unfinished season, to laugh before the whole story resolves, to celebrate a small win without waiting for the entire journey to be complete first. Some of you have delayed your joy for years, telling yourself you will finally feel happy once this one thing changes. My beloved child, I do not want you postponing your life until an arbitrary finish line. I want you present in the chapter you are actually living. Joy and grief both allowed to exist in the same season, because that is what a real life looks like. Not a life where every emotion waits patiently for its designated turn. I know rest can feel unfamiliar if your nervous system has spent years bracing for the next disaster. That bracing does not disappear the moment you decide to rest. It takes practice, gentle and repeated practice, learning slowly that peace is safe to receive, that stillness will not be punished, that you are allowed to exhale even before every circumstance has resolved in your favor. Practice resting today, even in a small way. Let something remain unfinished without letting it steal your peace. Trust me with one thing you have been white-knuckling for too long. Rest is not the reward waiting at the end of your effort. It is the strength that will carry you through the effort that remains. In the next part, I want to show you what your calling actually is, because I think you have been searching for something far more complicated than what I am actually asking of you. My beloved child, I have spoken to rest, and now I want to speak to your calling, because I think you have been overcomplicating something I made simpler than you realize. You have searched for a singular, dramatic purpose, convinced that if you have not found it yet, you are somehow behind, somehow missing the one thing your whole life was meant to revolve around. I want to release you from that pressure today. Your calling is not only the big, visible thing you may eventually do. Your calling begins with who you become in the ordinary moments no one is watching. It begins with how you treat the people in front of you today, how you respond when you are inconvenienced, how you show up for someone who cannot repay you for it. Before I hand someone a stage, I watch how they carry themselves in the room no one applauds. My beloved child, the small, faithful moments are not preparation for your calling. They are already part of it. I know you want clarity about the big picture, the title, the direction, the 5-year plan that makes sense on paper. I am not always going to hand you that kind of clarity in advance. What I ask instead is faithfulness with what is directly in front of you right now. The conversation you need to have today. The habit you need to build this week. The relationship that needs your honesty this month. Purpose is built one faithful decision at a time, not one grand revelation that arrives all at once and explains everything for the rest of your life. I also want you to release the fear that you have already missed your calling, that too much time has passed, that too many wrong turns have disqualified you from the life I intended for you. My beloved child, I do not work with wasted time the way you fear I do. I redeem the years, not just the successes, the detours you took. Even the ones that felt like failures at the time were not outside my ability to use. I have never once needed a perfect path to accomplish a purposeful life. I specialize in redirecting imperfect paths toward exactly where they need to arrive. Your calling is not primarily about what you accomplish. It is about who you become while accomplishing it, and who you help along the way. A title without character will eventually crumble under its own weight. Character without a title still changes the world. Quietly, one life at a time, in ways that matter more than most stages ever will. Stop waiting for a lightning bolt moment to tell you who you are meant to be. Start being faithful today, in the small assignment right in front of you, and let me build the larger picture out of your consistency instead of your certainty. I have never needed you to have it all figured out. I have only ever needed you willing. In the next part, I want to show you why the version of you standing here today, after everything, is not damaged goods, but a completely different kind of vessel than you were before, one I am not ashamed to use. My beloved child, I have spoken to your calling, and now I want to speak directly to how you see yourself, because I think somewhere along the way you started believing you were disqualified simply for having survived hard things. You look at your history and you see damage. I look at the same history and I see a vessel that has been through fire and did not break. One that carries stories that will make you compassionate in ways an untested life never could. I am not ashamed of your story. I am not embarrassed by your past, your struggles, your relapses, your seasons of doubt, or the years you spent completely unsure whether you believed in anything at all. I use exactly these kinds of stories, over and over, throughout history, because the people who have walked through the deepest darkness are usually the ones who can lead others through it with the most credibility and the most compassion. Your pain is not disqualifying. It is often the very thing that qualifies you to help someone else survive theirs. I know it is hard to see yourself the way I see you. You look in the mirror and you see every mistake, every wasted year, every relationship you handled badly, every version of yourself you are embarrassed by. My beloved child, I see the same history, and I see something different. I see someone who kept getting back up. I see someone who, despite every reason to walk away completely, kept reaching for me, even when that reaching was quiet, even when it was angry, even when it barely looked like faith at all. You do not have to have your life fully together to be useful to me. I have never required perfection as the entry price for purpose. I have always used imperfect, unfinished, still healing people, because that is the only kind of person available to me. There has never been another kind. Every single person I have ever used throughout history was flawed, wounded, and completely unqualified by the world's standards, and I used them anyway, not despite their story, but often because of it. Stop waiting to feel completely healed before you believe you have value. Value was never something you earned through healing. It was something I gave you before you were born, and it has never once depended on your performance since. You are worth exactly as much today, in the middle of your unfinished healing, as you will be worth on the other side of it. Healing changes how you carry your worth. It does not create your worth in the first place. My beloved child, walk forward today knowing you are not damaged goods. You are a vessel that has been through the fire and is still standing, still breathing, still reaching toward me even now. That is not a disqualification. That is a testimony, and I am not finished writing it. In the next part, I want to speak to the resistance you have felt every time you tried to move toward healing, because I do not want you thinking that resistance means you are on the wrong path. My beloved child, I have shown you how I see you, and now I want to speak to the resistance, because I know that every time you have tried to take a step toward wholeness, something has pushed back. You decide to forgive, and suddenly the memory of the offense feels sharper than it has in months. You decide to rest, and suddenly your mind fills with every reason you cannot afford to slow down. You decide to trust me with something you have been controlling for years, and almost immediately fear arrives with new arguments for why control was safer all along. I want you to understand why this happens, so it stops confusing you. Resistance is often strongest right before a breakthrough, not because breakthroughs are cursed, but because whatever has kept you stuck does not release its grip quietly. Old patterns do not disappear the moment you decide to change. They fight to remain familiar, because familiar, even when it is painful, feels safer to a tired heart than the unknown territory of something new. My beloved child, do not interpret the difficulty of a decision as proof that the decision was wrong. Some of the most necessary steps you will ever take will be the ones that feel the hardest to take. I also want you to understand that not all resistance is spiritual warfare, and not everything difficult is an attack. Sometimes resistance is simply grief, showing up because change, even good change, requires you to let go of something familiar. Sometimes it is fear, reacting the way fear always reacts to the unfamiliar. And sometimes, yes, it is exactly what you suspect, an active pushback against the freedom I am walking you toward, because there is an enemy who benefits from keeping you exactly where you have always been. Learning to tell the difference takes discernment, and I am building that discernment in you, slowly, through practice, not through a single formula that fits every situation. Here is what I want you to remember when the resistance rises. You are not required to feel ready before you take the next step. Readiness is often a feeling that arrives after obedience, not before it. If you wait to feel completely prepared before you forgive, before you rest, before you trust, you may wait for the rest of your life. Because that feeling of readiness has a way of staying just out of reach until you move anyway. Push through the resistance gently, without violence toward yourself, without demanding that the fear disappear before you act. Courage was never the absence of fear. It has always been movement in spite of it. Every time you have moved forward while still afraid, you have practiced a kind of faith that pleases me more than confidence ever could, because confidence often does not need me, and fearful obedience always does. In the next part, I want to speak to the identity you have built around what happened to you, because I think it is time for you to be known by something other than your history. My beloved child, I have spoken to the resistance, and now I want to speak to identity, because I have noticed how easily you introduce yourself by your wounds instead of by who I have made you to be. You say, I am the one who went through that. I am the one who struggled with this. I am the one people left. My beloved child, these things happened to you, and I have not asked you to deny them. But they are not who you are. They are chapters, not the author. I know how tempting it is to build an identity around survival, because survival at least feels solid, something you can point to and say, this is real, this happened, this is proof of what I overcame. There is nothing wrong with acknowledging what you survived. The danger comes when survival becomes the entire structure you build your sense of self upon. Because a life built entirely on what almost destroyed you will always feel unstable, always waiting for the next threat, always defined by what it escaped rather than by what it is becoming. I want to give you a different foundation. You are not primarily the sum of what happened to you. You are the child I created intentionally, loved before you had done anything to earn it, and called by name before the wound ever touched you. Everything that happened afterward, painful or otherwise, does not erase that original identity. It adds chapters to it, but it does not replace the title. This matters practically because how you see yourself shapes how you move through the world. If you see yourself only as broken, you will keep making decisions from brokenness, expecting less than you deserve, tolerating what you should not have to tolerate, staying small because small feels safer for a wounded identity to occupy. But if you begin to see yourself the way I see you, as someone I am actively restoring, someone with a future I have not abandoned, someone whose worth was never up for negotiation, you will begin to make different decisions. Not because you are pretending the past did not happen, but because you are no longer letting it write every chapter that comes after it. My beloved child, practice speaking about yourself differently, even quietly, even privately. At first, only in your own mind. Instead of I am broken, try I am being healed. Instead of I am the one who got left, try I am the one who is learning to trust again. Instead of I am too far gone, try I am still being written. The words you use to describe yourself become the walls you live inside. I want you living in a house built from truth, not from the leftover language of your worst season. In the next part, I want to show you how to hold on to hope without becoming naive, because I know you are afraid that hoping again will simply set you up for another disappointment. My beloved child, I have spoken to your identity, and now I want to speak to hope, because I know you have grown cautious with it. You have hoped before and watched that hope collapse, and something in you decided it was safer to expect less, to prepare for disappointment in advance so it would hurt less when it arrived. I understand that logic. I am not going to shame you for developing it. But I do want to gently challenge it, because I think it has cost you more than it has protected you. Guarded hope is not the same as wisdom, even though it often disguises itself as wisdom. Wisdom discerns. Guardedness simply braces. There is a way to remain grounded, realistic, even careful, without permanently lowering your expectations of what I am able to do in your life. I am not asking you to hope naively, ignoring red flags, dismissing wisdom, pretending every situation will work out simply because you want it to. I am asking you to hope honestly, which means holding both the possibility of disappointment and the possibility of breakthrough without collapsing into either one prematurely. I know hope feels risky because hope requires investment, An investment means you have something to lose if it does not work out the way you wanted. My beloved child, I want to remind you that hope in me is different from hope in an outcome. You can hope in me completely, without reservation, even while remaining uncertain about a specific outcome. My faithfulness does not depend on the specific answer arriving the way you pictured it. I am still good even when the outcome disappoints you. I am still trustworthy even when the timeline does not match your prayers. This means you can hope again without gambling your entire sense of security on one particular result. Hope in me first, and let the specific hopes for your circumstances rest inside that larger, steadier hope, instead of the other way around. When your hope is anchored primarily in a specific outcome, disappointment can shake your entire foundation. When your hope is anchored primarily in me, disappointment still hurts, but it does not collapse everything, because the foundation was never resting on the outcome to begin with. I am inviting you to hope again, carefully, honestly, without pretending the past did not happen, but without letting the past permanently narrate the future either. You are allowed to want good things again. You are allowed to believe they might actually happen. That belief is not naivety. It is the kind of courage that keeps a heart soft in a world that has given it every reason to harden. In the next part, I want to close with what I am calling you into now, the actual next season, because everything I have said to you so far has been preparing you for this. My beloved child, I have spoken to your resistance, your identity, and your hope, and now I want to speak to what is actually ahead of you, because everything before this moment has been preparation, not the destination. You are not meant to stay in the rebuilding forever. There comes a point where the foundation is strong enough to build on, and I believe you are closer to that point than you realize. The next season will require you to carry what you have learned without carrying the weight you have released. That means walking forward with the wisdom the pain taught you, without dragging the fear the pain also tried to teach you. It means loving people with the compassion your wounds gave you, without protecting yourself with the walls your wounds also tried to build. It means trusting me with the same courage that got you through the hardest nights of your life, except now pointed toward the future instead of only toward survival. I am not asking you to be finished healing before you step forward. Healing and forward motion are not opposites. You can walk while still mending. In fact, some of the deepest healing happens while you are moving, not while you are standing still waiting to feel completely whole first. I have never required a finished product before I use someone. I have only ever required willingness. There will be new opportunities in front of you soon, some of them uncomfortable, some of them exciting, most of them a mixture of both. I am asking you not to shrink back from them out of the old fear that used to run your life. That fear served a purpose once. It kept you cautious in seasons that required caution. But you are not in that season anymore, and I am asking you to recognize when a former survival strategy has become an obstacle instead of a protection. Before you go, my beloved child, I want to speak to something quieter than everything I have said so far. Something I have saved for the end because it needs the most tender delivery. I want to speak to the part of you that wonders if you are actually loved or only tolerated. There is a difference, and I know you have felt the second one more often than the first, from people who stayed near you, but never quite made you feel chosen, who kept you around but never quite made you feel treasured. I have never tolerated you. I have never kept you at arm's length while quietly hoping you would need less from me. I do not grow weary of your questions, your returning, your relapses into old fears, your seasons of doubting whether any of this is real. A love that tires of being needed was never the kind of love I offer. I am not depleted by your presence. I am not counting how many times you have come back to me after wandering, keeping some invisible tally that will eventually run out. There is no limit on my patience with you, my beloved child. I have never once reached the end of it, and I never will. I know you have measured love by how it was shown to you by people who were only ever capable of loving you imperfectly, because they themselves were wounded, tired, limited by their own unhealed places. You learned love that came with conditions, love that required performance, love that disappeared the moment you became inconvenient. My beloved child, I need you to unlearn that definition, because it was never mine. I have never asked you to earn my attention through performance. I have never withdrawn from you because you became difficult to love. I have never once needed you to be easier in order to keep loving you completely. This is the love I am extending to you right now, in this exact moment, regardless of what today has looked like. Regardless of the mistakes still fresh in your memory, regardless of how far you feel from where you think you should be. You are not too much for me. You are not too complicated, too broken, too slow to heal, too inconsistent in your faith. I am not measuring you against some ideal version of a person who trusts me perfectly and never doubts. I am meeting you exactly where you are, and I am staying. I want you to let this love settle into the places words alone cannot reach. Let it settle into the part of you that flinches when good things happen, waiting for them to be taken away. Let it settle into the part of you that still expects rejection the moment someone gets close enough to really see you. Let it settle into this part of you that has decided it is safer to stay guarded than to risk being loved and disappointed again. My beloved child, I am not like the ones who disappointed you. I am not asking you to trust blindly. I am asking you to trust based on everything I have already shown you. Every night I carried you. Every silence that was actually presence. Every delay that was actually preparation. Every broken piece I refused to waste. You are loved completely, not because of what you have accomplished, not because you have finally healed enough to deserve it, not because you have proven yourself worthy through some invisible scoreboard you have been keeping against yourself for years. You are loved because I made you, I know you, and I chose you, long before you had done anything at all to earn that choice. That love does not fluctuate with your performance. It has never once depended on it, and it never will. Carry this with you when you close this message and step back into your ordinary day. The dishes still need washing. The messages still need answering. The uncertainty about tomorrow has not disappeared simply because you read these words. But something underneath all of it has shifted, my beloved child, even if only slightly, even if you cannot fully name it yet. You are not walking back into your life the same way you walked into this moment. You are walking back in as someone who has been reminded, deeply and personally, that you were never forgotten, never abandoned, and never, not for a single second, unloved. My beloved child, I have shown you the delay, the pain, the empty seats, the shame, the broken pieces, the loneliness, my slowness, my voice, your anger, forgiveness, uncertainty, comparison, rest, your calling, the way I see you, your resistance, your identity, your hope, and the love underneath all of it. I want you to carry all of this with you as you close this chapter and open the next one. I have not forgotten a single tear. I have not wasted a single season. I am not finished with your story, my beloved child. And I am not going anywhere. Rise gently. Rest fully. Walk forward with me, one faithful step at a time, and trust that everything I have rebuilt in the silence was never meant to stay hidden forever. It was always meant to become the foundation for what comes next.